Hello, SpongicX's here, and I would like to show off some of the custom stages I made in Super Mario Maker 2. So first we have a stage called Snow Slope Coaster. This was the first stage I made, and it's mostly designed to be kind of like a tricky stage. So like it's mostly a coaster stage where you just gotta dodge a lot of stuff that comes at you. So it's like, for starters, I thought it'd be funny to, because there are some people who try, like, speed running levels that are automatic in a way, and so I thought it'd be funny to see, try to see people try to run up the slope, but they'll likely get stopped, if not by the shells and piranha plants, but by the point where they can't go any further without the platform, coaster. So yeah, this one might be a little tricky for some. I'll even admit I died a few times, despite the fact I'm the one who made it. Yeah, I gotta say this is the part where it gets a little tricky. So yeah, this isn't my best course, but like I said, it's my first, and I've already had experience of making levels in Super Mario Maker, so it's kind of funny how you could say it's probably better than any of the stages I made in that old one, but, I mean, it's just a simple, gimmicky stage, but... Up next, we have a remake of Gobies Valley from Banjo-Kazooie. So this was a stage I originally made in the original Mario Maker, but I decided to remake it for Mario Maker 2. Unfortunately, because of Mario Maker's limitations, there's not really much I could do to try recreating it as much as I wanted to. I wanted to add water for that small beginning area, but I couldn't, and you can't add hot sand, unfortunately, so I just had to use the little nipper plants instead. So here we have Luigi on the giant Sphinx, and in the original he had to shoot eggs into its nostrils to open up the door, and so in this one I had it where you just have to use the Tanuki tail to whack it open. So I decided to make, in the spirit of Banjo-Kazooie, I decided to make the stage a collectathon. You have to collect 100 coins, kind of like how you had to collect like 100 notes in levels, I tried recreating as much as I could, but eventually it just came to a point where, because it was so limited, I just gave up on doing the whole thing, and I just made kind of like a shortened version of this level. I also originally wanted to have something that kind of represented like collecting the Jinjos to help advance, but that didn't work out, unfortunately. So here we have the pyramid that had like the Kazooie totem on it, and inside I recreated the scene where you had to like climb up the giant snake and collect a Jiggy, except in this case it's a giant piranha plant vine and coin. So. Then I couldn't quite. And then that's supposed to be like the little beetles that fly around, and I also had it where in the original level there were like giant hands that burst out of the ground. I replaced them with Monty moles, and that last bit right there was supposed to represent like the giant hand that had the Jiggy, and you had to run fast enough to get it. I messed up there a little bit. I don't know why, but when I was recording this footage, I wasn't quite doing as well as I usually do when playing this game. But so this is probably my favorite level that I made, Castle Clouds. So first off, we start off by walking across like a giant rainbow road into a kingdom in the sky, and so this is another one of those levels where it's mostly built upon challenge. So by the looks of it, like according to the percentage rating, it looks like most people have died on this level instead of completing it. But so mission accomplished, I guess. But I'm kind of glad they added like a Sky World theme in this game. That was one thing I really wanted in the original Mario Maker. I still would have preferred, though, instead of making every level separated by a theme, I would have just gladly had them where they could have allowed us to mix themes together. And I hate how when it comes to, like, making warp variants, you can only warp into a second room in this, you know, like a second setting. I kind of hate that. I kind of wish it allowed us to make multiple rooms. Now, I can understand there have to be limitations, otherwise the game would probably crash, but still, I feel there are just so many levels that I wanted to make but had to cancel because I couldn't quite properly remake it the way I wanted to, and that's what's really disappointing. Like Gobies Valley, I would have been able to make a much better level if I was able to add water in certain areas, or, you know, make multiple rooms instead of having it split between two separate areas. And because technically, you know, it's like when you went inside that Sphinx and the pyramid, those were both the same room technically. Like, they were in the same area, but I had to split them up and make them look like they were two separate rooms. So, you know, it was fine enough for those two, because they already looked very similar in the original game, but it doesn't help that, you know, I wasn't able to recreate, like, the maze, or, the tile puzzle room, or anything past that. So, yeah, not quite what I wanted. I also tried making Spiral Mountain at first, and that did not work out, because, once again, I couldn't add water, easily, or, I wanted to make it where, like, I don't know, it just did not work out. I originally had it where, like, you had to collect, like, a certain number of things, kind of like, in order to progress, kind of like how in the original you had to collect, the honeycomb pieces before advancing into Grunty's lair. I wasn't quite able to do it. So here's my first, boss arena stage, called Bowser's Bayou. So it's where Bowser basically just built, an arena in, a swamp, and he's trying to defeat Mario. So, or in this case, Luigi. But, so, all you have to help fight against him are Yoshi, infinite number of, spawning, mushrooms, and, the real trick, though, is to, spit the fireballs back at Bowser, or try to lure him to get crushed by all the falling icicles. And you also gotta watch out not to fall off the cliff, or, land in the, spike pit below, well, the flame pit below. So originally in this level I did not have the platforms at the bottom, but then it became a little tedious when Bowser kept suicide jumping off the cliff, making the whole level too easy. So I had to add something to make it impossible for Bowser to die, but I also wanted to make it possible for a player to accidentally slip up and fall, so try to learn from your mistakes. And so eventually, and I thought the flares kind of gave it kind of like a cool little arena setting. It almost looks like some kind of like stage effect, or so yeah, I thought the stage turned out pretty well. I originally considered having the red Yoshi playable, but I thought that became too easy, though, with it constantly spitting fireballs, so I thought it would be more fun to have it be more of, you know, be more time-consuming by having it where you have to wait for Bowser to spit the fireballs, have Green Yoshi eat them and spit them back. I kind of wanted this to feel like a Daredevil challenge. It's like you gotta try to, you know, risk running into the middle in hopes that the icicles will fall and land on Bowser without landing on you, and so the last three stages I'm about to show are recreations of the first three stages in Conker's Bad Fur Day. So originally, in the original game, I did have both Hangover and Wendy as one level, but I decided to separate them in this version. And so, luckily, I was able to create, like, water for this level, because in the original Hangover level, there was a lot of water, and so in this, these levels, you gotta look out for the context-sensitive buttons. Unfortunately, they don't show up too often, as easily as I wanted them to, but it's like whenever those show up, just like in the original game, you gotta press B to find a hidden block with a power-up to help you advance. So, luckily they don't necessarily need to be needed to progress entirely, but So here's a recreation of the gargoyle scene, and you had to activate the lever, which opened the door, which originally gave you access to a frying pan, but in this one I replaced it with just a superstar, because I figured that was the only way you could easily get past the swamp gargoyle. Yeah, it's too bad there aren't any power-ups in this game that can be used kind of like a melee weapon. So here's a recreation of the scene where Conker pulled out the TNT and blew up the rock that was blocking the way, and so I replaced it with just a bob-omb. I made sure to have multiple spawn in case the player accidentally messed up the first time. So yeah, pretty standard level. I think Wendy turned out a lot better. So this one I recreated like where you had to retrieve the beehive from the wasps, and the part where you had to kill all the dung beetles that were blocking the passage to the barn level. So here I recreated like the sign that had like the naughty or nice side, and I even put a 1-up there just because there was one in the original too. So I wasn't quite able to replicate like the chase scene properly, where the wasp chase you as soon as you pick up the beehive, but so you bring it back to where the queen bee was supposed to be, and you use it to just activate a switch, which will allow you to, the switch is supposed to be a replica of like getting the money you needed to pay Birdie to get the slingshot manual. And so in this game, I replaced it with the switch, of course, and here we just saw, this was like a recreation of the windmill and the worms that popped out of the ground and tried attacking you. So instead of a slingshot, you got the fire clown car, and instead of beetles, you're shooting down the red Koopas. I was originally going to have the buzzy beetles, but then I thought it kind of ruined it because they kept flying past the stumps. I wanted them to kind of stay in place, kind of like how the originals did. They only came at you when you got close, so unfortunately it didn't quite replicate it as well. And if they kept moving, it would have made it easy for players to get past them. So yeah, that was my workaround. So here we have the Barn Boys chapter, and unfortunately I had to make a lot of sacrifices with this one, but I didn't want to cancel all my progress, so I still finished the level regardless. So, in the original stage, there were all those hopping metal block characters, and I thought it would be perfect to have the thwomps. And down there, the Monty Mole is supposed to represent Marvin the Mouse, but I wasn't quite able to replicate the scene where he had to give him 3 pieces of cheese until he blew up. And I almost considered like having a bob-omb be placed next to him, so when it exploded, it replicated the scene where he died, but that didn't work out, unfortunately, so I had to skip that whole scene. So, here we have inside the barn, and the Koopas are supposed to represent the hopping haystacks, and the Monty Mole is supposed to represent Frankie, because I couldn't find anything that properly mimicked, like, his, chasing mechanics, necessarily. Like, Monty Mole is one of the only enemies in this game that chases after you, so... And here we have the big-breasted sunflower. So yeah, this is another collectathon stage. You gotta find 4 hidden coins, and, darn it, while I was recording this footage, I accidentally skipped one of them, but I'll have to go back and get it. So this scene is supposed to replicate the part where you're in the cheese, farm, and there's, there was a hidden, context-sensitive area where if you, you know, use the anvil ability on it, it would have caused, you to open a secret passage. It had a bunch of multiple 1-ups in it, and so that's what that was, but... So here, and then that's supposed to be Bert the Gatekeeper, and so, so that was supposed to be the King Bee right there, and the POW block was supposed to be that giant, crate that hopped around that helped you get to the upper floor. So in the original game, there's the part where, Frankie the Pitchfork hung himself and you had to cut him down, so that's what this was replicating. You had to use the fire flower to, shoot the Koopa down, and... And those are all the stages I have to show for now. I don't really have any ideas for more stages at the moment, but if I do, I'll make sure to try to make videos of them someday. Well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.